For the disciplined, skilled player, you can make a living at either professional blackjack or professional poker, but which is better for you? To get into the pros and cons of both, I'm joined by professional poker player Phil Galfond. Phil, what would you say is the biggest advantage to professional poker?
In my personal opinion, it's just that poker's a beautiful, fascinating game. And every hand that you enter, every day that you play, it's kind of a new puzzle and a new landscape. You can really face a new challenge every day, figure out something new.
For the average person, how long would you say it takes to become a professional at poker?
Some people don't like this answer, but truly it depends. You could become a winner in an easy game in a matter of weeks, but to play in tougher games, it could be years. For some people, it's never. There is an aptitude element, and there is also just a lot of time and effort that goes into learning kind of high-level play. For more beginner stuff, for basic play, you can kind of learn systems that get you through and get you beating amateur players, but to reach higher levels, you really need to understand the game.
In blackjack, one of the nice things about it is it's a very closed system. We've found it takes about 200 hours. We've had a lot of people time their training, and that seems to hold up. It may be 100 hours to be pretty good, but then another 100 to be that where you can handle everything happening in the casino. And so that means someone could get there in a month if they just dedicated themselves to it. A lot of people it takes longer, or if someone spends an hour a day, it's going to take a long time to get there. But it is nice to know that you can have this skill set completely down in a decent amount of time. That's, I would say, one of the benefits to blackjack.
Have you noticed that, people over kind of basic level of mathematical aptitude can all get there?
Really, it's not more than what I teach my third grader in math. It's addition, subtraction, some simple division. That's really it. What's difficult is perfection and multitasking. So many things, so many sounds going on, and can you keep that focus, do everything right? Most people can get there if they put the time in. Some people can't. A slot machine goes off and their brain, loses the count, and you can't do that. Pretend I know nothing about professional poker. What are the skills I would need to become a professional?
To reach the level of professional, I think you do need some basic understanding of game theory as it applies to poker. And then it really is kind of similar to what you're saying with blackjack. The actual math that you need to do is maybe high school level at most. So you don't necessarily need to do college math. But if you're somebody who was scoring well on your math SAT or something like that, you're going to much more often do well. From there, it's a lot of logical deductions. Learning to understand how, if somebody else is deviating from optimal play, game theory optimal play, what you should do to counter that. And those counters are sometimes intuitive, sometimes not very intuitive. There's an element of psychology, reading players, which some people just have a natural aptitude for. Others can learn through experience what to expect from other players, what kind of lines they take, lines being the way that they play their hands. And how to adapt to that. From there, I actually think the biggest, most important skill to have is self-awareness. As a poker player, you can get yourself in so many bad games where you are a good player but up against all better players, and where you have room for improvement but you don't see the room for improvement. Also, just access to games is really valuable, and mental toughness, which I'm sure comes into play in blackjack as well. But in poker, it can be so brutal mentally, if you can't handle stress. It is a very stressful way to make a living.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover there. On the math side, it's pretty cut and dry for card counting. You have to learn basic strategy. You have to learn how to count. You have to learn how to bet according to that. You learn some playing deviations, and you get perfect at all that, and you can do the technical skill. Now, to be professional, you also have to have kind of an act, or you have to be able to get in the hours. And some people are good at that. Some people are not. And they just really struggle to not seem like a robot at the table with, lights going off behind them. Card counter, card counter. You have to have, emotional resilience to handle the heat, the backoffs, the swings, all of those things that go with it, the travel, the ability to network and collaborate with others if the opportunity arises. Those are things that take someone from I can beat the game to I can make a living at the game, I would say. And of course, a bankroll.
Yes, I didn't mention that, but a bankroll is very important, and managing that bankroll, which comes into, I guess, it goes into the mindset thing of not losing control.
People don't want to play games professionally if they're not going to get paid well for it. What could a poker pro expect to make?
So there's a really wide range of what you can expect as a poker pro, and I guess I want to caution people out there as I say this whole range. The high numbers get really high, but the percentage of players, even professionals who reach that level, there are very few. But I would say for low to mid stakes professionals, they can expect to make something like $20 to $50 an hour, and poker players tend to play pretty high volume. I guess it's a fun game. So I at full time, it's 40,000 to 100,000 a year. And then when you get up into high stakes, you can really make hundreds an hour or thousands an hour, and in very rare cases, in like the 5 figures per hour, which like at times in my career in certain games I've made that, but very rarely. You can have salaries, annual income of the hundreds of thousands to millions, even tens of millions for those rare few. Although I think those people who hit those really high hourlies, the game availability is pretty low, so they probably don't hit the expectation of 10 million plus per year. The other caveat I want to give is that if you ask any poker player, professional even, who's been doing it for a while, their hourly rate, they almost always overestimate, because you can look at so much data just with the variance. You spend 6 months running pretty well and winning, and you're like, okay, so that's my hourly rate is that. And then you spend 3 months losing. You're like, okay, well, before that was my hourly rate, now I'm running bad, which is true that you're running bad now, but you were also running good before. I think people don't do a good job of accounting for kind of reality, as well as all the time that goes into studying and all the things that aren't actually sitting at the table playing.
Professional poker player will play how much a week? How many hours would you say?
For most of my career, it's very easy to play 40 hours plus, and a lot of players play 40 hours plus and as many as 80 hours, because they're really playing a game that they love and in a small way are sort of healthily addicted to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's my understanding. Is a lot of poker pros, they're playing 40 plus hours. Card counters, and that might be why I gravitated to it, is laziness, that I can make good money without having to work full time. I would say that a full-time blackjack player is probably 20 hours a week, maybe 80 hours a month. Now there is other work, like you said, there's travel, there's record keeping and things like that. But you can't just show up at a casino and sit down and play for 8 hours. You can sometimes, but for every time you sit down and play for 8 hours, you get 30 minutes somewhere else. And there isn't that access to volume, as you called it. But also for a lot of people I know, they don't want to be spending 40, 80 hours playing. And maybe it's because it's not as novel of a game. Maybe it's such a closed system. It would be boring to stand split, double down 80 hours a week. Maybe it'd be nice if you're making that hourly rate for a year or two. But a blackjack player, for my career, I think I was between $300 and $400 an hour for my professional career. And before that, I was like $10 an hour and building up a bankroll, but which is pretty good, $300 to $400 an hour. But I also got sick of it after a couple of years. And poker players, they might not. So that's where it could depend what you're looking for. If you're looking for something that you're going to enjoy doing for years, poker might make sense. If you're looking for a way to make some good money for a little bit, then maybe learn some other skills, card counting might make more sense.
Yeah, and I think that con for blackjack of kind of the repetitiveness of it can be a pro in some ways, because in poker, when you go on a downswing, you can't really point to anything and be certain that you have a positive expectation. Whereas I would imagine, I'm not a blackjack player, but I would imagine if you're a good counter, if you played in a plus EV way. And so that it's just variance that's hitting you. But as a poker player, one of the toughest things mentally and emotionally is going from thinking, okay, I'm a pro, I make 200,000 a year average, to losing 50,000 straight for over 2 months with like very few wins, and thinking, oh, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to win again.
Yeah, I actually think that's one of the reasons I didn't take poker further. I could leave a casino losing $40,000 at the blackjack table and on the drive home say, well, I did everything right. And my personality, I would stay up all night thinking about what hand did I misplay at a poker table. And that would have been hard for me. I like the certainty of the closed system. It fits my personality better.
One element of that, the thinking about hands you might have misplayed, I do the same, and every great player I know does the same thing. There are poker players who I think fit the description better of blackjack players, that they never do great because they just like to be so careful so that they can know that they're winning. Despite needing kind of similar, I would say, aptitudes, I think poker can work really well for people who are less rigid, less structured, less studied even, and more just creative, high IQ, but in a creative way. Those people tend to do very well without as much work as others who are a lot more rigid and methodical.
What would you say is the schedule of a poker pro?
Poker pro schedules are usually all over the place. First of all, games tend to be better at night, and especially as you get to higher and higher stakes, the way the poker economy works is the games run around a few individuals. If you're playing online, it's a handful of people that run the higher stakes. If you're playing in LA casinos, it's a couple people that might run around. So you kind of are at the whim of people's schedules. There was a time in my career when I would sit alone at a table online and put my computer on full volume next to my bed. And so I would go to sleep at like 2 a.m. and very often, at 4 a.m., just beep, 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 I wake up and I'm playing. The opportunities were so good. And so schedules can get all over the place. Not to mention, I'm talking cash games. Tournaments, there are start times and end times, but you don't know when you're going to bust out of the tournament. So all in all, poker playing schedules are unpredictable.
To me, that's one of the strengths of blackjack, is that you can choose when you want to play. Now, it is true that usually night shift is better because that's when more tables are open. But, it's not uncommon for a card counter to take a month off, 2 months off, and just say, oh, well, when do I want to plan a trip? I asked my buddy, $1 Million Blackjack player, Joe 748, and he said that he worked 134 days a year, which is about a third of the year, and he made a little over $200,000. The flexibility can be nice, though. Like a tournament, you don't know when you're going to bust out. As a card counter, you don't know when you're going to get asked to leave a casino and then be on the road to the next shop and not know if you're going to get 10 minutes or 10 hours. There's that unpredictability. You get to choose when you want to do trips and work that around your schedule to a degree. What would you say are the downsides to professional poker?
I think the biggest is stress. It's a very stressful career. There are some the players that you see, making YouTube content or that you see on TV, a lot of those are, in the top few percent of success. And there are a lot of professionals out there, the ones who are, making $20 an hour, $30 an hour, where, you're struggling to get by, and there are months where you lose. Yeah, irregular hours, financial instability, uncertainty, not only about your ability to win, but it's not just your game and your skill, but sometimes opportunities go away. Sometimes online poker sites shut down or countries ban online poker. Sometimes the game that you're playing in your local casino goes away for one reason or another, or certain players stop playing or other players infiltrate it and it gets too tough. You do have to kind of reinvent yourself sometimes in poker, and there's just a lot of uncertainty to deal with.
I could probably basically quote what you said and put blackjack in there and it would work, because it's all the same things. Like the emotional part is very difficult. A lot of people aren't prepared for that. They think, oh, blackjack's fun, Well, it's not fun when you're losing and getting kicked out of casinos. I remember there was this awesome casino that we were playing. This is on an early team, and we're driving down there. We're doing this 4-person high stakes team play. We come back a month later. They'd put continuous shuffle machines at all the tables. And we just had to drive home. You can't predict that. You can't predict if tables are going to be full or you're going to be able to get a seat at the table. You can't predict if the casino is going to let you play or not. And you definitely can't predict the swings. Everybody's good with a positive expectation swing, but man, those negative ones can be absolutely brutal. How many hours should someone expect to have of a losing streak if they're going to be a professional for a few years?
It completely depends on your win rate and the game that you're playing in. So in an online low edge game where, my specialty is Heads Up, Pot Limit Omaha, and I mostly play against pros. So it's a relatively low edge game, and the variance is very high in Pot Limit Omaha. It's about double what it is in No Limit Hold'em, more popular format. And then Heads Up is one-on-one, so it's huge variance. So you could lose for a very long time there. Whereas if you're playing in a casino, 9-handed, in a relatively soft game where your win rate is literally 10 to 20 times as high as the win rate I was talking about in a heads-up match against a good player, then you shouldn't expect to lose for, I can't quantify it really, but you shouldn't expect to lose for more than a couple weeks.
Yeah, if you count cards long enough, you're going to have a 200-hour losing streak. Now that could be, if you're playing 80 hours a month, yeah, that could be three months, that could be brutal when it's your income, but you need to be prepared for that. But I've heard that there can be some really long swings for poker players.
If you're playing the kind of games I am, you can lose for a year, realistically. If you're playing live tournaments and like large field tournaments like World Series of Poker that you see on TV, you can lose for so long. And the variance there is brutal because so much of the money is just up top and like the top 3 players out of 3,000. And so you go for a couple years without ever making the top 9 players, the final table, you're going to be losing.
I remember talking to someone that was a full-time blackjack player and then transitioned to poker. And I was like, oh, how's poker going? And they said, I had a losing year, but it's going okay, And it blew my mind because to a card counter, we'd be freaking out if, you have a losing 6 months. But I get it.
Yeah, it happens. And also the other thing is when you're losing in poker, you can start actually becoming a losing player in expectation because you play worse, you make bad decisions, you play longer sessions, you play with people you shouldn't be playing with. So it's not just variance that does it.
That can happen in blackjack too. People start playing poorer quality games, like the dealer isn't dealing out as much before the shuffle. That really hurts your win rate. Or you start, maybe over betting, pressing your bets, or under betting and not putting the big bets out when you need to. All those things can, or playing full tables and your win rate's a lot lower than you're expecting it to be. Those things can happen to a blackjack player. So that's where that emotional fortitude and self-awareness sounds important in both.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple of the other things that can be downsides, the travel for blackjack. I have a friend that's been beating a local in-casino poker game for the last few years, and he's just enjoying that. And you can't do that at blackjack. There's no casino that's going to let you play, for a few years. And so the travel, for some people, it's a bonus. That's why they get into card counting, is a travel. But it can also be, especially me, I started having kids and I was like, I really can't be on the road half the time. So that's something someone needs to consider if they're thinking about professional blackjack.
Yeah, in poker, it's kind of up to you. It depends what path you want to go. If you want to play live tournaments, the best tournaments are going to require you to travel. Live cash games, you could stay in one place pretty much. Online, of course, you can stay in one place. I've mostly chosen the paths that keep me in one place because I don't like to travel too much. I like to be home.
To learn more about poker, where should they go?
You should head to either philgalfond.com. I have a newsletter where I share insights every week, or runonce.com, which is my poker training site. It's me and 50 other pros with I don't know how many millions of winnings and dozens of bracelets.
What about the YouTube channel?
Yes, and the YouTube channel.
And to learn more about CardKang, check out our YouTube channel or blackjackapprenticeship.com.